Some leather crafters experience difficulty with the Tri Weave basket stamps. Mostly they find it a challenge with alignment and registration. My goal in this program is to show you a few techniques that will be very helpful when using these tools. I would like to begin by doing a 1.5 inch belt. So the first thing I will do is scribe a border on there, and then with my swivel knife I will cut the border very carefully. There are two sizes of Tri Weave basket stamps, and they both have one feature that is very important. And they have very small little bumps on the face of the tool that is for registration. And they are very, very important, and we'll show you how they're best used. One of the challenges with the Tri Weave stamp is that it's very difficult to make guidelines, because if you do, they will always show. Let's try this one. We'll make one nice deep impression. Now, I'm going to stay as best I can in the center of the two borders. Now, each time I do, I can rotate the tool until I feel it drop into those registration holes. And as they do, then I can do my next impression and do the best you can to remain in the center of your belt, and make sure that you register each time. Now we will continue down to the end of our belt. As we get ready to do our second row, we need to be concerned about the registration. In this case, there'll be 1, 2, 3 points for registration. If we got our tools in right the first time, it should be real easy to register in those 3 holes. Now be careful. This tool will go over the edge, so we need to tilt it back. Now we will register in 4 holes. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now it should drop in there real nice, and you can feel it now. Notice I am tipping this tool back so that I do not go over the cut edge. So now, if everything is lined up properly, it should be real easy to register this tool and go on down to the other end of the belt. Next, we will bevel on the inside of our border cuts. I'm doing that with a rather large beveler. You can always use the largest beveler that you can. After we have beveled both sides of our borders, we could actually leave the belt just as it is, and we'd have a nice belt. Or we could take the border stamp of our choice and stamp a nice decorative border on here. And here we have a real nice belt with the Tri Weave down the center. As I mentioned earlier, it's very difficult to use a Tri Weave with a border line or with a guideline, because it's hard to put it in any position where it will not show. So let's see what we can do about that when we have a larger area like we have here on this checkbook. Now, we want it to be relatively even on both sides So what we'll do first, we'll take a ruler and we will find the middle here. So I'll just put a light mark there for the middle. I'll do the same thing down here at the other end. Now, what I'm going to do is take my tool and make one impression right in the middle, as you see me doing here. Now, I will take my tool and go down to the other end, right in the middle, and make a very light mark. As you can see, just barely visible. Now, I can take a ruler, and as I set this tool in the impression, I'll bump the ruler up against it, and I'll do the same thing on the other end up here. Now, I will take some blue masking tape or Scotch tape, it doesn't matter, and I will tape the ruler in place on both ends. Now I have a guideline that will not show, and it is removable. So now it's just a matter of registering my tool in those two holes and make my impression. Now I very carefully register each one and bump it up against my ruler, and we'll go all the way down to the other end. And now we can remove our ruler, and we have a nice first row that is perfectly straight. Just like we did with the belt, we'll now register very carefully all four of the points. And we will continue to add rows. I would like you to look very closely right here. There's a situation where we had one stamp maybe a little bit out of registration, and we have a little mark here. One way to fix that is to take your B199 bevel, which has got parallel lines on it, and just very carefully set it in there and hit it very lightly, and it will clean up any of those little areas where you were a little bit out of registration. And now, with my large beveler, I will bevel inside my cut all the way around this area. Now I'm using one of my favorite border stamps to stamp inside the border where I beveled. I'll come down to the other end, and I always like to make any adjustments that I need to in an area that's not near a corner. So let me take my tool, and yes, I can get 3 more in there if I stretch them out just a little bit. Someone wanted to know, could you stamp with the Tri Weave stamp in a circle? Yes, you can if you're very careful. Now, I would suggest no more than one main row, as you see me doing here, and I'm using the small one. Now, each time I register it, I will register it, and then turn it ever slightly to stay on my curve. Now, keep in mind we need to stay in the center of the two parallel lines that we have cut on there. So register it and then turn it ever so slightly. And I would suggest that this is much easier to do if you use the small one and on the smaller pattern as I'm doing here. I'm now putting in a partial row. As you can see, I'm registering and then I'm leaning the tool back so that I do not get any impressions outside of the border line. Not striking very hard, just enough to get a slight impression. And as we've done with our other pieces, we'll bevel on the inside. After beveling, I could put a small border stamp or camouflage inside, but that might get a little crowded, so I think it's a little plain, so why don't I just take this veiner and go around the outside, as you see here. I'm staying about 1/8 of an inch away from the cut. Not necessary to do a guideline. And of course I can do the inside row as well. And of course, if I would like to really fancy it up, I could take a border stamp and go in between each of these impressions of the veiner tool. And here we have an example of what you can do by using the small Tri Weave tool in a circle.